Welcome to the Books Bible Study as we continue on our journey to go through the entire Bible. Stay on the journey with me. Don't get tired. Don't get weary. Just continue to read through, gain an understanding, get answers to your questions, get answers to situations that you may be experiencing right now in your life. So today we are on Exodus chapter 16. Verse 1 reads, "And they journeyed from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they departed from the land of Egypt." So the first month on the 14th day was the day of the Passover, right? And the day that God killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. So the last chapter, they had went 3 days into the wilderness after crossing the Red Sea and praising God for their deliverance. So now this is the middle of the second month, right? So it's about 1 month after their exodus from the land of Egypt. Verse 2 says, "Then the whole congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness." Verse 3, "And the children of Israel said to them, 'Oh, that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, and when we ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger.'" So first it was fear, right? Because they saw the Egyptians coming after them, right? They saw the Egyptian armies behind them until God blocked that with the pillar of cloud and pillar of fire, right? God swallowed the Egyptians up in the Red Sea, right? Then they complained because of the water at Marah. Okay? God made those bitter waters of Marah drinkable and sweet, right? And now they're complaining because of hunger, right? How many of you have had those moments where you wanted to go back to Egypt, right? The place where you were in bondage, all because what is in front of you that goes against what God has promised you, right? Why isn't the promise of God sufficient enough for us to go through the thing that we're facing, right? Why is Egypt more enticing to go back to than to rely and trust in God? It's not like they don't know what God said or what God promised them. He continues to repeat what he promised them, right? So now they are complaining about hunger, okay? This is after the Red Sea. They crossed over on dry land. He made the bitter water sweet, right? And now they're complaining about hunger, okay? Verse 4 says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain quota every day, that I may test them whether they will walk in my law or not.'" So God is testing his children, right? I believe he's testing them to get the Egypt out of them, right? And also to learn to trust him every step of the way. Because 3 days doesn't seem like a long enough span of time to forget the walls of water on both sides of you as you crossed over on dry land, right? Verse 5 says, "And it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily." Okay, verse 6 says, "Then Moses and Aaron said to all the children of Israel, 'At evening you shall know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt.'" Verse 7, "And in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your complaints against the Lord. But what are we that you complain against us?" Okay, they're just obeying God. Verse 8, "Also Moses said, 'This shall be seen when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning bread to the full. For the Lord hears your complaints which you make against him.' And what are we? Your complaints are not against us, but against the Lord." Again, they're only telling them to do what the Lord is telling them, right? Verse 9. Then Moses spoke to Aaron, say to all the congregation of the children of Israel, come near before the Lord, for he has heard your complaints. Verse 10. Now it came to pass, as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in a cloud. Verse 11. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, verse 12, I have heard the complaints of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God. Verse 13. So it was that quails came up at evening and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay all around the camp. Verse 14. And when the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a small round substance, as fine as frost on the ground. Verse 15. So when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, what is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, this is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. Yeah. Verse 16. This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Let every man gather it according to each one's need, 1 omer for each person according to the number of persons. Let every man take for those who are in his tent. Right? Very strict instructions, right? They're being tested in their obedience to God. He let them know that I am testing you, right? Obedience is required for every believer. No one is exempt, okay? So an omer in dry weight is about 4 to 5 pounds. So this amount, 4 to 5 pounds of this, is more than enough to fulfill the amount of daily calories needed for an adult person, right? So God is very generous because he could have just given them enough not to die, right? However, he gave them well over the amount needed to get full. So God set the limit for the daily amount, right, that they should take for each person, and he set the man to take for those who are in his tent, right? But very strict instructions on how much they could take, when they could take it, right? Verse 17, then the children of Israel did so and gathered some more, some less, right? Because it depended on the size of the family, how much they gathered. Verse 18, so when they measured it by omers, he who gathered much had nothing left over, and he who gathered little had no lack. Every man had gathered according to each one's need. Verse 19, and Moses said, let no one leave any of it until morning. Verse 20, notwithstanding, they did not heed Moses, right? But some of them left part of it until morning, and it bred worms and stank, and Moses was angry with them. Why do we get mad when we disobey God and something bad happens, right? It's like we have to know the reason why God said what he said, you know, why he said don't do this, or why he said do this. We have to know why before we fully obey him. Why is that, right? He told them the specific amount. He might not have told them why, but you can't get upset if you go against what he said and a bad thing happens, right? Verse 21 says, so they gathered it every morning, every man according to his need, and when the sun became hot, it melted. Verse 22, and so it was on the 6th day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. Verse 23, then he said to them, this is what the Lord has said, tomorrow is a Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake today, and boil what you will boil, and lay up for yourselves all that remains to be kept until morning. Verse 24, so they laid it up till morning as Moses commanded, and it did not stink, nor were there any worms in it. So the day that they were to gather twice as much, it did not stink or get worms because they couldn't gather it on the Sabbath, right? So we must understand that God's limits are always for protection. It's not for domination. It's for our protection. And yes, it will test our trust in him. Okay? And the way that you can test yourself to see if you trust God is to obey even before you fully understand, right? Even before you know the why, right? Behind what he's telling you to do. That's how you know how much you trust him. Because when you trust him, you don't need to understand why. I trust you, right? And a lot of times our minds cannot even comprehend the why, right? Um, Verse 25. Then Moses said, "Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field." Verse 26. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will be none. Verse 27. Now it happened that some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather, but they found none. Why? Because he said it wouldn't be none, right? Verse 28. And the Lord said to Moses, "How long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws?" Verse 29. See, for the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore, he gives you on the sixth day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the seventh day. Verse 30. So the people rested on the seventh day. Verse 31. And the house of Israel called its name manna, and it was like white coriander seed, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. So here is another miracle, right? Dry land in the midst of a sea, bitter water made drinkable and sweet, bread from heaven, right? But with each of these things required obedience, right, from Moses and Aaron. Not only to use his rod, which was God using what he had to do the miracles, right? But also to speak the instruction of God to the children of Israel. So for every one of their hardships that they had, well, God provided a way. God made a way out. He made a way through, right? He made a way over. And so he is the same God now that he was then. He is unchanging. So that's the good news. If we see that for every hardship they had, for every amount of suffering that they had, God provided a way out, a way over, a way through for them. And he's not changing. So that's good news to us, right? Verse 32. Then Moses said, "This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Fill an omer with it to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread with which I fed you in the wilderness when I brought you out of the land of Egypt." Verse 33. And Moses said to Aaron, "Take a pot and put an omer of manna in it and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generations." Verse 34. As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. So they were to keep or have a memorial for God feeding them in the wilderness, which will be a physical witness or physical testimony, right? Even keeping that generation to generation would be a miracle, right? Because remember, when they kept it over until morning, it stank and there were worms in it, right? So just keeping this memorial would be a miracle in itself. So when you do the things that God says do, right? How he says do it, then what you do is protected, right? It is covered under your obedience. It's when you are in disobedience that it is not covered, right? So if God tell you to do a thing in one season and you try to do that same thing in another season and he didn't tell you to do it, it's not covered, right? Verse 35. And the children of Israel ate manna 40 years until they came to an inhabited land. They ate manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. Verse 36. Now an omer is 1/10 of an ephah. So we're going to be seeing these measurements, right? And remember, omer is 4 to 5 pounds. So it kind of gives you an understanding of how much they had, right? So God fed them for 40 years. But some of us can't trust God to feed us for one day, right? He didn't just feed one family or a couple of families. Remember, he fed over 600,000 people to the full. Not, they had a quota, but their quota was more than enough, right? Every single day for 40 years, not only did he feed all of those people, they had animals, they had livestock, right, that were fed and watered as well. So you cannot convince me that God will not provide, right? Especially with a smaller number of people without any animals, right? For those of us that don't ranch, okay? You can't convince me that God cannot provide, right? In the areas where you do not see his provision, just ask yourself, have you obeyed, right? If you're not sure, then ask him to reveal the areas that there may be disobedience. And so let's just stay out of that Egypt mentality, right? No amount of anxiety or fear is worth us no longer being free. It's not worth our freedom, right? God will provide. We have to pass the test of obedience and obey him, right? Even when we don't understand, even when we don't know the why. We have to get it out of our mind that we have to know the why. Because sometimes the why is too much for us, right? Because God sees far beyond what we can see. So that concludes Exodus chapter 16. Continue to stay with us. If you need to catch up on any chapters, it's important that you go back and catch up on the chapters that you missed so that any information that you need going forward, you won't be lost. You'll be in the loop on, oh, okay, that's what that means. That's what this is. This is what happened. This is why they're doing that. Yeah, so keep up. We're going on to Exodus chapter 17. God bless.